Some thoughts on the Bills' rushing offense, an injury update with Dr. Kyle Trimble, and my predictions for Monday night against the Bengals are all coming your way today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON in the game. Well, folks, this Monday Night Football game is a big one. A lot of hype for this game. We know what's on the line. The Bills claim this victory, and they are going to be in really good shape to be the number one seed in the AFC playoffs. Of course, they'll have to beat the Patriots next week, but that seems very manageable. Of course, that starts with beating the Bengals on Monday Night Football. I've talked a lot over the last week about how different the course is to the Super Bowl if you're the 1 seed versus the 2 or the 3 seed. And those are the options for the Bills. They will either be the 1, 2, or 3 seed. For the Bengals, they could be the 1, 2, 3, or the 5 seed. If they don't beat the Bills, then they are in a big spot next week against the Baltimore Ravens for the AFC North. If the Bengals were to drop both games, they're going to most likely be playing on the road for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs at least. So a lot is at stake for both teams, but there's been some statistics that have come out about this game that are pretty compelling that I want to share here at the top of the show. This game on Monday night between the Bills and the Bengals, both teams have a combined 23 wins. That ties the most ever for a Monday Night Football game in league history, matching 1997's matchup between the 49ers and Broncos, who also had 23 combined wins. Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, they have combined for 66 passing touchdowns and 78 total touchdowns this year. Both numbers, passing touchdowns and total touchdowns, are the most ever by 2 opposing quarterbacks on Monday Night Football. This is a big one. The eyes of the nation will be on this game. It's the one everybody wants to see. And obviously, we've done a lot already to prepare for this game. And so with our remaining time left, I want to next talk about the Bills' rushing offense. Then we'll get to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills on the injury front. And then I have 5 original predictions for you this week as to how I think this game is going to unfold on Monday night. But I do want to talk about this Bills rushing offense because it has really, really taken off. And I'm not sure I've given enough attention to it on this podcast. For the season, the Bills' rushing statistics are very, very good. They're 7th in the NFL in rushing yards per game. They're 1st in yards per attempt. The Bills, as you probably know, are the only team in the NFL this year with 100 rushing yards or more in every single game. It's been a productive rushing offense all year long, but it has really gotten good of late during this 6-game win streak and really since the bye. Since the bye, the Bills have really ran the football with a lot of success. But in particular, this 6-game winning streak, when accounting for just the running backs, so just remove all the quarterback rushing stats out of the equation. Take Josh Allen out of this. The Bills in the last 6 games with their running backs have 131 carries for 746 yards and 5.7 yards per attempt. That is outstanding. Over the last 6 games, Devin Singletary is 8th in the NFL in rushing yards. James Cook is 24th, and Josh Allen is 28th. The Bills right now, over the last 6 games, have 3 of the top 30 most productive rushers in the entire NFL. 3 players, 1 team, Buffalo Bills. Singletary 8, Cook 24, Allen 28th. All 3 of these players are over 5 yards per carry. All 3 of these players are in the top 10 in yards per carry over the last 6 weeks. And here's a stat that I really love. The Bills are getting explosive runs. 18% of the Bills' runs from Allen, Singletary, and Cook have went for 10 or more yards. They are getting big plays running the football, and this is great news. This is a great way to make sure that you can be a two-dimensional offense, that you always have the threat of running the football. And so what I want to do here is talk about the why. Well, why are the Bills running the football so well this year? And why, especially of late, have they settled in? But before I get there, I do want to mention something about Josh Allen's rushing statistics, because it feels like anytime you talk about the Bills and running the football well, it's met with comments from other people about, well, Josh Allen inflates those rushing stats. Okay. Well, first of all, I just went through and talked about how the Bills running backs are the absolute catalyst for this success, and talked about how productive they have been without Josh Allen. But why do we have to discredit Josh Allen's rushing stats? When Josh Allen runs the football and gains 10 yards, he gains 10 yards just like James Cook or Devin Singletary would gain 10 yards. There's no difference. All of the production matters. It all counts. It's all meaningful. They're all good plays for the offense. So I don't really understand this burning desire that people have to discredit rushing stats that are influenced by a quarterback. Those stats matter too. I was talking to somebody who I really respect when it comes to football, not a Bills fan. And I said, hey, what if I told you, and I went through some of the metrics that the Bills have had running the football since the bye. I said, what if I told you that about the Bills' rushing offense? What would you say? And the response was, Josh Allen's doing his job. I don't know. I think we got some false perceptions out there about this Bills rushing offense. Yeah, Josh Allen does influence it. He impacts it. He's a great asset to the Bills rushing offense, but this is also and mostly about Devin Singletary and James Cook. And so I want to make sure that we give them their credit here in this conversation. So let's dig into the why. Why are the Bills running the football so well? 3 things come to mind. First of all, the scheme has developed. The scheme has developed. You've seen the Bills go away from a outside zone heavy attack to a more balanced rushing offense, more zone and gap runs blended together with a bit of an uptick in gap runs. And I think it just comes from an understanding that Ken Dorsey and Joe Brady and Aaron Kromer and Mike Shula have gained in being around these players and scheming it and drawing it up and figuring out what works. So first of all, the scheme has developed. Number 2, and this kind of feeds into number 1, is they are using the mobility of the offensive linemen. The Bills have an unbelievably athletic offensive line, maybe the most athletic offensive line in the NFL. And this was a big talking point of mine over the offseason, where I went through and shared just how much more athletic the Bills' offensive linemen are this year, 2022, compared to the 2021 unit. The week 1 starting offensive line in 2021 was Deion Dawkins at left tackle, John Feliciano left guard, Mitch Morse at center, Cody Ford right guard, Darrell Williams at right tackle. The average RAS score, that's relative athleticism score, which takes, athletic measurements that is size adjusted, and it scores them out of 10. The average player in that week 1 offensive line last year was a 6.08 out of 10 when you consider their relative athleticism score. If you apply the same to the Bills' 2022 offensive line, which we know is Dawkins, Saffold, Morse, Bates, Brown, that RAS score average is 9.31, a massive uptick in athleticism. And I'm not going to try to cast shade on Feliciano, Williams, or Ford right now, but those guys are not very fleet of foot. They're not very athletic. Every offensive lineman that the Bills have right now in this starting five is a terrific athlete. And I think the Bills, from a design standpoint, have done such a good job of late tapping into the movement skills and the range of these offensive linemen. Getting some of these guys out in longer pulls, getting them to the second level and out in space to seal blocks and create more opportunities for the Bills' ball carriers. I think they've done a much better job of utilizing that of late compared to earlier in the season. And one thing that maybe we're not giving enough consideration to is just how injured the offensive line was during training camp in preseason. You remember Roger Saffold had the rib injury that kept him out for a while. Dawkins missed time. Spencer Brown missed like forever. It wasn't until late into the preseason until he was actually practicing with consistency. And so if you remember some of those conversations, you heard the concern that I had that these guys needed time together because offensive line play is about five guys working together as one, especially with a new play caller, new offensive line coach in Aaron Cromer, who's very outspoken about how the techniques that he wants are very different, and usually guys get a little bit worse before they get better under his coaching because they have to adapt to his style. And I think you're starting to see that come together. And it was a little bit behind, not only because everything is new, but because you had a good piece of this offensive line that wasn't practicing together in the preseason. I think it's been a lot better now. So those two things. And then I also want to shout out James Cook. James Cook is absolutely settling in. A lot of expectation for what he can be this year. And early on, he was pretty quiet. Had some moments, but for the most part, pretty quiet. Some blunders early on with ball security. But he has settled in, and I think he's figuring out his pace. He's figuring out how to read leverage and process and adjust, and he's become just a much more effective player. And so I think all those three things, and I guess maybe even four when you consider just the health of the offensive line, I think all of that factors together for this Bills offense being as two-dimensional as we've seen it ever under Sean McDermott, right? I know that you think about 17 and 18, and those offenses weren't good anyway, so it doesn't matter. 19, it's kind of an uptick with Josh Allen taking a step, but still didn't score a ton of points, right? That was kind of the big issue. Remember the Houston game, couldn't score enough points, go out and get Diggs and all that. But I think that this is more stylistically the offense that Sean McDermott has envisioned. And I think the other side of it is you hope the passing offense finds a bit more rhythm and consistency the rest of the way. And you don't lose something there, because obviously you're at your best when you can run it like this, but also throw it like you did against Miami or Tennessee or Pittsburgh or the Rams, whatever, insert Kansas City, games where Josh Allen was very, very effective throwing the football. So you got to want to blend that together the rest of the way. But I think the most encouraging thing is that this rushing offense is taking off. It's taking off at the right time, especially late season, cold weather. You want to play home playoff games. You're going to need to be able to lean in on this. And I think the Bills are well positioned to do that this year. I'm really geeked out by our new partner and sponsor of today's podcast, the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You manage every strategic aspect of your team. You play through the season, and you lead your team to glory. You will be responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and, of course, all the ups and downs of a season. With all this in a challenging and realistic game world, Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. I've actually heard from a lot of listeners to the podcast that have been having a good time playing this game. We actually have a league for the Locked On hosts, and we are having a blast. So get in on the action. And, in fact, we got a little special for you. Locked On Bills listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps, so make sure to use it when you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. I'm joined now by Kyle Trimble. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He runs bangedupbills.com. You can follow him on Twitter at bangedupbills. He joins us each week to get us ready for the upcoming Bills game from an injury perspective. And Kyle, both of these teams are in pretty good shape. We actually only have 2 players across both teams with a game day designation. So let's talk about what we need to talk about here. But for the most part, these guys are pretty healthy. But I do want to start with the Bills designation, Jordan Poyer, who is questionable with a knee injury. And I guess I'm just kind of curious what you know about it and if you think his status is in jeopardy for Monday night.
So Jordan Poyer originally injured his knee back against the Dolphins late in the third quarter. He was trying to come around the edge. He got a low block, and the Dolphins offensive player hit him in the right knee as he went flying over. So it looked like just a really bad contusion. He was able to play through the game. He said he was okay, but we've heard those guys say a lot of that. I'm okay. And then they, miss several weeks or whatnot. So obviously that's a concern because Poyer, he's a big part of what the defense is able to do, and they're undefeated when he's playing. So I don't know whether he re-injured the knee at all during the Bears game, but he did not practice Thursday or Friday. It was limited on Saturday, but the expectation he would be that he tries playing just because we've talked about this before. He's playing for a contract. He's playing for a Super Bowl. There's so much that he brings to the table. It just would not be good if he isn't able to get out there. So I'm sure let's make it questionable, make sure the pain's okay, but the expectation he's going to play just because he's played through so much already this year.
Yeah, it kind of feels to me like they're just taking it cautious when it comes to the practice component because the injury happened against Miami. He played all the snaps against Chicago, and then there's an extended break between games. And I thought it feels more like just managing the workload and making sure he's ready for the game. But obviously he's got a designation. I think both of our expectation is that he's good to go for Monday night. Now, a player that won't play on Monday night is Christian Benford, the Bills rookie cornerback out of Villanova, who's come in and been a very pleasant surprise for the team. He's been on injured reserve with an oblique injury, but the Bills this week did open his 21-day window to start practicing, and now they have a chance to activate him to the roster. Now, if they go through this amount of time, 21 days, and they don't activate him, he goes to injured reserve. And so I'm just kind of curious what you can tell us about Benford, who had an oblique injury, and if you think this is just more a matter of him getting some run, getting some practice here late in the season, and he shuts it down, or is there a path for him to come back and actually help the team, that considering that he's actually fully healthy and ready to do that?
I think there's a strong path to come back. The biggest thing would be, who do you cut or what player do you remove, like through injury, what have you? What's that roster transaction to bring him back to the roster? We know that it was an oblique injury. He said back when he injured against the Detroit Lions, I believe it was, because then he missed the following 4 games after that, 13, 14, 15, 16. So he said he injured it and it slowly tightened up throughout the game, but there wasn't that definitive injury where we saw it on film when it was. There was a few thoughts of that. So we don't know where in the oblique it was. We don't know how severe it was, but 4 weeks should be more than enough time, especially for an area that has such rich blood supply to the area and they've been doing rehab to the area. I would expect he comes back pretty healthy. I think the biggest barrier is just that what roster transaction do you make to bring that guy back, especially being a rookie after all these guys that you've been having playing through December? Who do you cut to put on the sidelines there? So I think that they want to get his practice window ramping back up, getting back in cardiovascular shape and everything else he needs to do, so that if there is the opportunity to bring him back to the roster, he can jump right back in instead of kind of working his way back in game shape like we saw other guys have to do. So it's a matter of just not if, but when.
Yeah, well, and look, circumstances could dictate this, right? There's 2 games to be played. An injury could happen that makes it very easy to say, okay, that player goes to IR, they're done, Benford's activated. To me, the guy in the back pocket's Cam Lewis. I've talked about him on this podcast as to me the obvious player if you want to get Benford back into this roster. that you go ahead and release him and sign him back to the practice squad, assuming he clears waivers. So to me, that's the course short of an injury. I do want to ask you a question about the Cincinnati Bengals here. They only have one player with a designation, and that is Sam Hubbard, who had a calf injury a couple weeks ago. He missed their game against the Patriots, and it was never really at the time an expectation that he'd be available for this game against the Bills. Limited all week in practice, and there's some momentum here that he could play. It's a calf injury. Maybe it's a situation where, hey, we'll see what it feels like in pregame and make the decision there. To me, it feels early. It feels rushed, but we just watched Trey Hendrickson, his running mate at defensive end, play with a broken wrist against the Patriots. And I love Trey Hendrickson as a player. I've watched him for a number of years. I know that he wasn't right? That's a hard injury to play with. I know that it's a matter of just kind of dealing with the pain, but that's tough. So I would guess if these guys can go, they're probably not going to be the full version of Hendrickson and Hubbard, who I think is one of the better defensive end tandems in the league. But just kind of curious what your expectations are for both of these players.
So we'll hit Hubbard first. So he suffered the left calf injury against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and had to leave, obviously missed last week. At the time when the report came out, they said he would miss up to 4 weeks. So to come back after 2, after saying 4, we've seen guys come back quickly, but they were hoping that he could come back for the playoffs there. So looking at when he would come back, let's say he comes back for the Bills game, that would be about the average time you would miss for a calf injury per the research. However, do you rush him back out there against the Bills? Because you can make the argument that the Bills, they have more riding on this game than the Bengals do. The Bengals are already locked into the playoffs, but they have week 18 matchup against the Ravens next week to play for the division title. Would you rather save your star player and get him an extra week of rest, knowing that you can win the division and lock yourself a home playoff game in? Or do you try to beat the Bills? And that might still be a benefit to that there. So I don't think he plays just because of the fact that what week 18 means to the Bengals versus what week 18 means to the Bills, though both weeks still mean a lot to both teams. So I would say let him sit 1 more week. As for Hendrickson, he's working through a right wrist fracture. I thought he'd miss some time, but he's right back out there. He says he's playing through a lot of pain. I commend him for getting out there and playing, but you said yourself, he's not himself, and I'm okay with him not being his normal self against the Bills, especially for another week.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with both of those teams, those players. Obviously, the Bengals do have a path to the 1 seed, but they do need the Chiefs to lose to either the Broncos or the Raiders, and I don't think that's going to happen. So their sights could be set on the division. And what's interesting for Cincinnati is they could be anywhere from the 1 seed down to the 5 seed, right? Like there's a path for all of that, and it's not crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all sorts itself out. Obviously, the Bills control their own destiny. They win this game. They still got to beat the Patriots next week, but they're really going to be in good shape to be the 1 seed in the AFC. And if that happens, Dr. Kyle Trimble, we'll have a week off from talking about injuries, which will be great. And hopefully there's not many to talk about after that, but we'll live in that world when we get there. For now, it's all about this game coming up on Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. Dr. Kyle Trimble, thanks so much for lending us some of your expertise. And, of course, a very happy New Year to you and yours.
Thank you, and Happy New Year's.
Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Well, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. I know it's everyone's goal to eat a little healthier this year. And if that's the case for you, then you got to try Built Bars. They're perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably tasty flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I actually had, a raspberry bar earlier today. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. I mean, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box. For years, I've been telling you about Built Bars and ordering them over at Built.com, which of course you could still do, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. So head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, then run in and grab a 13-bar box with their hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later. Check them out. Built Bars, the best tasting protein bars on the planet. All right, folks, it's prediction time here on the podcast. I have 5 original predictions for you today. Let's get into them. Number 1, I am predicting 600 passing yards combined from Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Talked at the top of the show about how productive these players have been, how big the stage is. You know they're both going to want to put on a show. MVP resumes are on the line. I think you're going to get some volume of passing here. Obviously, the Bengals have been a prolific passing offense, don't really run the ball well. They're going to lean into their ability to throw it. The Bills, obviously, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they're going to want to throw it too. And I think these guys are going to want to be productive. I think you get at least 600 passing yards combined from both quarterbacks. Now, I'm not predicting 300 from both. Could see 275 from one and 325 from another, something like that. But I think when you add it up, these quarterbacks will combine for 600 passing yards or more. Number 2, I am predicting 100 receiving yards from Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs been a little quiet lately. In fact, over the last 6 games, Diggs has only led the Bills in receiving one time. That's crazy, right? One time. In the last 6 games has Stephon Diggs been the team's leading receiver. Now, the first 9 games of the season, Diggs led the team in receiving 7 out of 9 games. And so I'm looking for the Bills to prioritize getting him the football on Monday night. And Stephon Diggs has been really, really good on Monday Night Football since 2016 when he came into the league. Diggs leads all receivers on Monday Night Football in receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and receiving first downs. So Diggs is good on Monday night. You're probably going to need to score a bunch of points. He's been quiet of late, or quieter of late. I think you're going to see some volume going to Stephon Diggs, and I think he'll have some chances to win one-on-one against Eli Apple and Cam Taylor-Britt. I think you're going to see a good night from Steph Diggs. Number 3, I am predicting that the Bills' streak of 100 rushing yards continues. Obviously, every time that the Bills add to this streak, it's unlikely, right? This isn't something that's been done by any other team this year. And the Bengals, I think, have a very good run defense. DJ Reader, BJ Hill in the middle are very good run defenders. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt as downhill players, very, very good. But I think the Bills maybe can attack the edges a little bit of this defense. We'll see what Hendrickson and Hubbard are able to do. Maybe have some chances to get these guys moving horizontally and win off tackle and use the range of that offensive line like I talked about. So I think the Bills, and look, Josh is going to run the ball a little bit too, right? Got to have it game. You know he's going to take off. So I think the Bills' streak of 100 rushing yards will continue on Monday night. My next prediction is that the Bills get a non-Hail Mary interception. The only interception that the Bills have over the last 6 games on defense was that last offensive play by the Bears where Nathan Peterman, if I'm not mistaken, threw up a Hail Mary and Jaquan Johnson caught it for an interception. That's it. That's the only interception that the Bills have since the Minnesota game against Kirk Cousins. And that's something that I've talked about a little bit. Surprises me. And not that Joe Burrow is a turnover-prone quarterback, but he's got a good amount of interceptions this year, and especially of late, he's been throwing a few. So I think that the Bills will get a non-Hail Mary interception in this game. I'm not sure they get multiple, but I think they might get one. And lastly, I do think the Bills win this game. I don't have a great level of confidence about that. This is the least comfortable I've felt all year predicting the Bills to win, and that includes when I predicted the Bills to win in Kansas City. I felt a whole lot better about the Bills being able to go win in Kansas City. And that really comes down to, I think the Bengals defense is just way better than Kansas City's. And the Bengals D, to me, is as big of a problem or concern as Joe Burrow in the passing offense because of just how good I think their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, is and how multiple their personnel can be and how they can stress an offense. And so I think there may be some challenges there. But I have some level of optimism about the Bills in this game. I think this is a team, obviously, that's wanted this 1 seed, has come up short. I think they've learned a lot. I feel like this is a game that we're going to see some new wrinkles. I think that there's a lot that's going to be different in this game. But I think what the real difference is going to be is I think the Bills have a more two-dimensional offense, and that's the difference. Where the Bengals just haven't been productive running the football this year. They lean into a vanilla passing offense, and to their credit, it's been effective, and they got good receivers and a great quarterback and, good tight end, 2 good running backs to throw the football to. But, I wonder how much they can dictate terms with that. We'll see. I mean, the Bills historically have been a pretty good passing defense. So it's going to be really good football game. I'm anticipating. I don't know that either team gets close to running away from it, but I have a level of comfort with the Bills because of everything they've been through, not just this year, but in previous years, to be able to pull this off. I mean, they've been resilient all season long. They know how to win tight ball games. I think they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulders and get this done. Might be a bit of a struggle at times, but I am with a small level of confidence predicting a Bills win on Monday Night Football. All right, folks, there you have it. The hay's in the barn. We've done all we can to prepare for this football game. Now it's just up to the Bills to go out there and score more points than their opponent. And if they do, we'll have a Victory Tuesday for you. If they don't, we'll still have a Tuesday podcast, of course. So we'll stay up late on Monday night and get that thing recorded for you. So if you're staying up late, you'll get it at some point in the wee hours of the morning. If you go to sleep, when you wake up, it'll be there for you to push play on Tuesday. So hope everyone had a safe and wonderful New Year's Day. Go Bills! And I look forward to catching up with you after the game.